Good evening, everyone. Thank you, everyone from across Canada and around the world, for joining us in commemorating the 26th anniversary of the deadly Amia terrorist bombing in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Tonight, we honor the memory of 85 men, women, and children whose lives were cruelly cut short on July 18, 1994, and to renew our call for justice against the perpetrators of this murderous attack, justice which has been denied for far too long. Tonight's commemoration will begin with a somber musical performance by way of Buenos Aires, featuring Janina Meller and Adrian Minchuk. Thank you again for joining tonight's commemoration ceremony. May justice for the victims come swiftly and without delay. Thank you, Janina and Adrian, for that heartfelt performance. We will now hear from His Excellency Eugenio Maria Correa, Ambassador to Canada of the Argentine Republic.
Good morning and bonjour, my friends from the night period. My name is Eugenio Correa. I am the Ambassador of Argentina to Canada. And first of all, let me tell you, Shalom. I would like to convey on behalf of the people and the government of Argentina our deep and sad message when we remember the bombing of the Amia on July 18, 1994. As you know, 85 people died and several hundred were wounded when this disgusting and scourge act took place in Buenos Aires. You know that Jews in Argentina has been a big asset in the development of our country. It's the biggest concentration in Latin America and the seventh largest in the world, and Argentina has been a traditional land of hospitality for the Jews persecuted during the 20th century. In this idea and concept, all Argentinians were victims of the bombing in 1994. The government has been pledging its commitment to find the people who were responsible for the attack. That have to sign out. It has been the largest attack in Latin America from a terrorist point of view. The idea is to persecute, to prosecute, and to condemn the people that were responsible. And in this sphere, we have been always asking the Iranian government to provide us with cooperation in order to get the evidence. But we need the other states' friends in order that we will be able to achieve this. Just a simple comment regarding to terrorism, as John Paul II, Saint John II, as is now, has been referring to terrorism, which is come out from hatred, and it's a real crime against humanity. Let me just finish this very simple message to your community with the idea and your words that justice you will pursue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Next, we have remarks from His Excellency Eitan Naeh, Israeli Charge d'Affaires to Canada of the State of Israel.
Dear friends, it is my honor to join you today as we commemorate the victims who lost their lives during the attack on Amia Building in Buenos Aires, Argentina. On this difficult day, Israel joins Jewish communities around the world, here in Canada and especially in Buenos Aires, in standing alongside the families of the victims in mourning their loss. We take this day to remember the vibrant lives and contributions of those we have lost. The victims of this horrific act of terror came from all walks of life. They were Jewish, Christians, doctors and lawyers, fathers and mothers, sons and daughters. To the families of the victims, we are with you and we are here to remember. Let us honor those we have lost and ensure that the legacy lives on. Let us never forget the names. Israel continues to fight against terrorism, both in Israel and around the world, to help make the world a better and safer place. On behalf of the Embassy of Israel in Canada, I would like to thank Bnei B'rith for organizing this very important commemoration in remembering and honoring the victims of this horrible attack. May they never be forgotten.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We will now hear from Michael Levitt, the Member of Parliament for York Centre, bringing greetings on behalf of the Government of Canada.
My name is Michael Levitt, and I am the Canadian Member of Parliament from the riding of York Centre in Toronto. On the sombre occasion of the 26th anniversary of the bombing of the Amia Jewish Community Centre in Buenos Aires, I am honoured to join you in remembrance of the victims of this terror attack. The victims of this terrible incident, 85 people killed and hundreds more injured, were Argentines and immigrants, Jews and non-Jews alike. They came from all walks of life. They had families. They mattered. The youngest Amia victim was 5 years old, the oldest 73. All deserved a life of peace and happiness that was torn away from them and their families by violent terrorists. We must never forget this attack and always stand for justice for its victims. The attack was not just an attack on the Argentine Jewish community and Argentinians. It was an attack by the Iranian regime against Jews around the world, meant to spread fear and division. As Canadians and as a Canadian Jewish community, we join together with Jewish communities around the world. We will never be silent or back down from this threat. As Canadians, We will continue to stand against the anti-Semitism and hatred and the violence exported by the Iranian regime through its proxy terrorist group Hezbollah, through the regime's continued threats against Israel, and through its wholesale support of terror and export of terrorism around the world. On this somber and tragic anniversary, we remember the victims, and we pledge to make their legacy one of peace and security for their families and Jews around the world. May their memories forever be a blessing.
Thank you, Mr. Levitt, for your remarks. We now invite the Honourable Peter Kent, Conservative Member of Parliament for Thornhill, for his remarks.
The terrorist outrage that destroyed the Amia Community Center in the heart of Buenos Aires 26 years ago, taking the lives of 85 innocents, leaving hundreds injured, has been characterized as Iran's forgotten crime against humanity. But as we gather again, even if only in virtual commemoration, we must reject that characterization and continue to demand justice, prosecution of those Iranian government officials who directed the attack, even as we honor the memory of those who died. When I visited the restored Amia Center in 2010 as Canada's Minister of State for the Americas, I saw firsthand abundant evidence, proof that the Islamic Republic of Iran, its diplomatic agents, along with terrorist operatives of Hezbollah, were responsible, and that because of incompetence, corruption, political interference, and in 2015 the murder of an investigator, none of the 6 named Iranian accused have been brought to trial. For this and other crimes against humanity perpetrated by the Iranian regime, a conservative motion calling for the listing of Iran's entire Revolutionary Guard Corps was passed in 2018 by the Canadian Parliament. The Liberal government, though, procrastinates still, and the justice due the victims of the Amia attack, not to mention all who have perished at the hands of Iran's terrorist policies, remain unfulfilled. May the memory of those 85 souls whose lives were taken on the 18th of July, 1994, be a blessing, and may justice in their names yet be served.
Thank you, Mr. Kent. Offering remarks on behalf of the Conservative Party of Canada, we will now hear from Marty Morantz, Member of Parliament for Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley in Winnipeg.
26 years ago, terror was unleashed on the Buenos Aires Jewish community. 85 people were killed and hundreds were injured in the Amia bombing. Families were shattered, lives were cut short, hopes destroyed, and now the global Jewish community continues to mourn with our Argentinian brothers and sisters. Sadly, terror and hate did not stop after this attack, and we still see hateful attacks on Jewish people and communities and other groups in Canada and around the world. In March of this year, a synagogue in my hometown of Winnipeg was defaced with anti-Semitic graffiti. Last August, 2 young boys in the Greater Toronto area Jewish community were assaulted, as was a Jewish man in Montreal who was assaulted by a taxi driver. Even during the pandemic, we saw anti-Semitic Zoom attacks on synagogues during online prayer services. These are just a few examples of the racist incidents that have occurred across Canada. And as we can see, anti-Semitism has not gone away. In fact, it is unfortunately on the rise. In 2019, there was an 8% increase in anti-Semitic incidents compared to 2018. It was the 4th consecutive year that anti-Semitic incidents increased in Canada. Assaults have also become more bold and violent in 2019, with several occurring in broad daylight and some directly in front of eyewitnesses. Canada is sadly not free of racism, and we still see people discriminated against based on their religion, the color of their skin, who they love, and even more. In the peaceful and free society that we are fortunate to live in, there is absolutely no room for this kind of intolerance, racism, or extremism of any kind. Far too many face discrimination every single day. Recent events have resulted in concerted efforts across the world to stand in solidarity against racism and anti-Semitism of all kinds. The world is listening. We have an opportunity now to work together to bring awareness to historical acts of hate like the Amia bombing. Today, on behalf of the Conservative Party of Canada, I express our solidarity with the family members of the victims and the entire Argentinian Jewish community, and reaffirm the Conservative Party of Canada's steadfast commitment to fighting racism and anti-Semitism of all kinds in Canada. Together we can overcome injustice by building new relationships, strengthening communities, harboring love between all people, no matter of their race, religion, or their sexual orientation. I want to thank B'nai B'rith so much for the work you are doing to combat anti-Semitism and bigotry, and your relentless commitment to the security and safety of the Jewish people. We must never be silent. We must root out hate when it rears its ugly head. We must stand together against anti-Semitism and bigotry of all kinds. Lord Mann, a member of the British House of Lords, once said, "If we stay silent on the issue of anti-Semitism, we unwittingly allow cowardice and bigotry to speak its own repulsive language." Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morantz. On behalf of the New Democratic Party, we will now hear from Heather McPherson, Deputy House Leader and Member of Parliament for Edmonton Strathcona.
Hello, I'm Heather McPherson, Member of Parliament for Edmonton Strathcona, and I'm honored to deliver our statement commemorating the attack on the Argentine Israelite Mutual Association on behalf of the New Democratic Party of Canada. This brutal terrorist attack of July 18, 1994, took the cherished lives of 85 people and injured hundreds of others. Today, it is vital that we remember this abhorrent act, not only to commemorate those who suffered, but to renew our call for truth and justice. For 26 years, Argentinians and citizens around the world have been denied truth and justice. But no matter how many years pass, we will never forget what happened in Buenos Aires that morning. We will never forget Sebastian Bayarello, just 5 years old, murdered as he walked holding his mother's hand. We will never forget Jacobo Emanuel, who slowly died under the rubble, his last words encouraging another man, Martin Cano, to hold on. Martin did hold on. We will never forget Rebecca, Andreas, Ramon, Elena, Paolo, David, Veronica, and all the other victims. We will never forget them. And we will never forget Alberto Nisman. To honor their memories, let's work together to rid the world of anti-Semitism, to rid the world of all hate. And let's commit to finding truth and bringing justice for the victims of the Argentine Israelite Mutual Association attack and all acts of terrorism.
Thank you, Ms. McPherson. And thank you again to all of our elected officials who stand for justice for the victims of the Amia bombing and their families. The Jewish community greatly appreciates your commitment and support. We are honored to be joined by Rabbi Sergio Bergman, former Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development of Argentina and the current President of the World Union for Progressive Judaism, for his remarks.
On March 17, 1992, a terrorist attack attributed to Hezbollah on Iran destroyed the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires. 22 dead, 200 wounded, 28 years of impunity. On July 18, 1994, the Amia headquarters of the Argentinian Jewish community was blown up with a car bomb in a terrorist attack attributed to Iran and the local connection. 85 victims, 300 injured, 26 years of impunity. On January 18, 2015, Alberto Nisman, General Prosecutor of the nation, was assassinated in his department A few years early, he has denounced the President of the nation, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, for covering up the Iranians responsible for the attack on Amia in 1994. The trial is in process. 5 years of impunity. Shame for Argentina. Truth, memory, and justice for the victims. Today we remember the victims of the terrorist attack on the Amia headquarters. We raise our prayers for his blessed memories. They will not rest in peace without justice. For the victims of the attacks of the Israeli embassy and the Amia headquarters, for the murder of prosecutor Alberto Nisman, today we demand truth, memory, and justice. Justice, justice you will pursue, the Torah teaches. Tzedek, tzedek tirdov, leman tihye.
Thank you, Rabbi Bergman, for your remarks. We will now hear from Michael Mostyn, CEO of B'nai B'rith Canada, on behalf of the organization.
Good evening, and thank you all for joining in tonight's Amia commemoration from across Canada and around the world. On behalf of B'nai B'rith Canada, I wish to extend my sincere gratitude to everyone at home today in paying respect to the memory of the victims of the Amia bombing. The horrific bombing of the Amia Jewish Community Center on July 18, 1994 was the worst terrorist attack against the Jewish community in the Western Hemisphere. This vicious terrorist attack cost the lives of 85 people, injured hundreds, and shattered the hearts and lives of countless more relatives and friends. The year 2020 is the first year marking over a quarter century of justice having been denied for the victims and the survivors, as well as their families and their friends. An entire generation has passed, and still, not a single perpetrator has been brought to account for this crime. When we speak of justice, we must direct the blame where blame is due. As has been well established, the terrorist group Hezbollah carried out the attack under the direction and coordination of the Iranian regime and its terrorist arm, the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Painfully and shamefully, we have seen efforts to seek justice for Amia be stymied by previous Argentinian government administrations, put the interests of foreign governments ahead of the needs and rights of its own citizens, all alongside the Iranian regime itself. In 2015, we witnessed the murder of the late prosecutor, Alberto Nisman, killed in his own home immediately prior to his scheduled testimony before the National Congress of Argentina, where he was set to prove active collaboration between the Argentinian and Iranian governments in hampering investigations of the bombing. Many have claimed him as Amia's 86th victim. On our part, in Canada, B'nai B'rith has called for the federal government to list the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist entity. The request followed the introduction and acceptance of a motion in the House of Commons to this effect in 2018. The government committed to listing the terrorist group, but have continually failed to do so some 2 years after that public commitment. In February of this year, B'nai B'rith Canada filed a lawsuit against the Canadian government for failing to carry out the will of Parliament. Our efforts to have the IRGC listed is intended to ensure that no Canadian funding ends up in the hands of terrorists. Full stop. We cannot afford to have another Amia attack in Argentina, Canada, or anywhere else. Enough is enough. The time for remembering those lost in the Amia bombing is forever, but the time for action is now. Tonight, we have an opportunity to do the very least we can do, to remember the names of the victims and give them voice through our voice. To say their names aloud is done not only in honor of their memory, nor is it only to remember the crime that was carried out against them. It is also a reminder for us to pursue what still needs to be done in their name. And just as importantly, it is to remind the perpetrators of this murderous attack that we will not relent until they are brought to justice. And that day is coming. Thank you again for joining us tonight. May their memories be a blessing.
Thank you, Michael. All too often, when we gather to commemorate an historic tragedy, the human cost can still be difficult to fathom. For the survivors and their families, the consequences of the Amia bombing have played themselves out every day since the attack. To illustrate just one story from that fateful day, we will now hear from Anita Weinstein, a survivor of the Amia attack, who will share her story with us.
First of all, I want to thank you for creating this space dedicated to the remembrance of the attack of the building of Amia, the central organization of the Jewish community in Argentina, in order to honor the memory of the 85 victims and reclaim for justice. I will never forget that day, because definitely it was a day that changed my life forever. It was Monday, and I thought it would be similar to any other Mondays, but it was not. Just another day. It was not just another day. It was the day that I faced the death very close. That day, I had entered the building together with Mita Strier, my assistant. We went to our office in the second floor, and only a few minutes later, I remembered that I had to seek a colleague of mine in the rear part of the building. And I went there, and that made the great difference. As soon as I got there, we heard a loud explosion. Material started to fall from the roof. An intense darkness covered us, dust that made us difficult to breathe. Everything was trembling. Broken glass was heard falling from the windows, panic and shouting. At the first moment, we did not understand what was happening. We did not know what to do. My thought went to Mirta. I wanted to go backwards, but somebody took my hand and said, "Don't go farther, there's no floor where to stand." When finally somebody could open a door, we could breathe, grasp some air, and also climb to the next floor. Standing on that floor together with just a small bunch of people, including a young woman that was sitting on the floor breastfeeding her baby, we could see the horrible dimension of the bombing. We became really aware of the enormous impact of this devastating and criminal attack, planned and perpetrated by people willing to kill us and destroy Amia and everything around us. None of us did matter to the terrorists who conceived, financed, and executed the bombing with the help of Argentine accomplices. I so became the survivor of a terrorist attack, considered the most outrageous anti-Jewish act after the Holocaust, from which my parents had survived. During all these 86 years, I did continue working in Amia, very focused on the intent to motivate especially young people in the understanding that both justice and memory are essential ingredients in every society. I tried to make them understand that each one of us, in whatever place anyone stands, has the possibility to contribute in the building of a society respectful of diversity, to the coexistence where differences cannot become motivators of aggressions, violence, or extremist actions, including taking the most precious good that we all have, the right to live.
We wish to graciously thank you for sharing your story with us, Anita. We know it can be painful, but we must hear these stories again and again to both remind us of what was lost and to strengthen our resolve to keep pursuing justice in the Amia bombing case. We now have a second performance out of Winnipeg, with Nina Ailberg and Marcelo Lubocki performing Con las alas del alma.
la medida, el amor lo reinvento. Y al vivir cada instante y al gozar cada intento, sé que alcanzo lo grande con las alas del alma desplegadas al viento. Con las alas del alma desplegadas al viento, más allá del asombro me levanto entre escombros sin perder el aliento y me voy de las sombras con algún filamento y me subo a la alfombra con la magia de un cuento. Con las alas del alma desplegadas al viento, atesoro lo humano cuando tiendo las manos a favor del encuentro, por la cosa más pura con la cual me alimento, por mi pan de ternura con las alas del alma desplegadas al viento. Con las alas del alma desplegadas al viento, ante cada noticia de estupor, de injusticia, me desangro por dentro y me duele la gente, su dolor, sus heridas, porque así solamente interpreto la vida. Con las alas del alma desplegadas al viento, más allá de la historia de las vidas sin gloria, sin honor ni sustento, guardaré del que escribe su mejor pensamiento. Quiero amar a quien vive con las alas del alma desplegadas al viento.
Thank you, Nina and Marcelo, for your moving performance. At this point, we will now read the names of the victims of the Amia bombing. We urge those at home who are able and wish to do so to light a candle in memory of the victims as well.
Silvana Alguea de Rodríguez, Jorge Antúnez, Moisés Gabriel Arasi, Carlos Avedáneo Bobadilla, Janina Muriel Aberbuch, Nahum Band, Sebastián Barreiros, David Barriga, Hugo Norberto Basiglio, Rebeca Violeta Pejar de Jurín, Dora Belogorowski, Fabio Enrique Bermúdez, Romina Ámbar Luján Voland, Emiliano Gastón Brickman, Gabriel Butini, Viviana Adela Casabé, Paola Sara Xiseuki, Jacobo Chemahuel, Cristian Dectiar, Diego de Pirro, Ramón Norberto Díaz, Norberto Ariel Dubín, Faiwel Diamant, Mónica Feldman de Goldfeder, Alberto Fernández, Martín Figueroa, Ingrid Finkelstein, Leonor Gutmann de Finkelstein, Fabián Marcelo Furman, Guillermo Benigno Galarraga, Erwin García Tenorio, Cookie Ginsberg, Cintia Verónica Goldenberg, Andrea Judith Guterman, Silvia Leonor Ersalis, Carlos Ilú, Emilia de Leuczuk, María Luisa Jaworski, Augusto Daniel Jesús, María Lourdes Jesús, Ileana Merkovich, Bubi Mirochnik, Mónica Nudel, Elías Alberto Palti, Germán Parsons, Analía Verónica Josh, Carla Andrea Josh, Elena Sofía Castica, Esther Klein, León Gregorio Knorpel, Berta Kosuk de Lost, Luis Fernando Kupchik, Agustín Diego Leu, Andrés Gustavo Malamud, Gregorio Melman, Rosa Perelmuter, Fernando Roberto Pérez, Abraham Jaime Plaxin, Silvia Inés Pornoy, Olegario Ramírez, Noemí Graciela Reisfeld, Félix Roberto Roisman, Marisa Raquel Said, Ricardo Said, Rimar Salazar Mendoza, Fabián Schalit, Pablo Schalit, Mauricio Schieber, Néstor Américo Serena, Mirta Striar, Liliana Edith Swimmer, Nahum Javier Tenenbaum, Juan Carlos Terranova, Emilia Graciela de Toer, Mariela Toer, Marta Treibman, Ángel Claudio Upfal, Eugenio Vela Ramos, Juan Vela Ramos, Gustavo Daniel Vázquez, Isabel Victoria Núñez de Velázquez, Danilio Villaverde, Julia Susana de Creiman, Rita Worona, Ademar Zárate Loaiza.
May their memory be a blessing. I now invite Rabbi Anibal Mas of Congregation Shaarei Tzedek in Winnipeg to recite the Mourner's Kaddish prayer in honor of the victims.
El Malei Rachamim Shochem Bameroimim Hametze Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShekhinah V'ma'alot Kedoshim Kedoshim Uteorim Kezoyer Raki Amazirim Lenishemot HaKedoshim Asher Naflu Korban Bifeulot Terror Be'Argentina Ba'avur Shanu Mitpalelim Lilu Nishmoteihem Began Heiten Tei Menuchatam Lachem Balerachamim יהסתירם בסדר כנף לעולמים בצרור החיים החיים את נשמתם אדוני ונחלתם וינוחו בשלום על משכבם ונאמר אמן. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה וילמד דברי חידותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהא שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה נמירם בעלמה וימרו אמן. יהא שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו אמן. עושה שלום ממרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו אמן.
Thank you, Rabbi Mass. Before we complete tonight's commemorative gathering, I wish to again thank our members of Parliament for their support and steadfast dedication to pursuing justice for the Amia bombing victims and in standing up against anti-Semitism, discrimination, and terrorism in Canada and around the world. And thank you again to His Excellency Eugenio Maria Correa of the Argentine Republic and His Excellency Eitan Naeh of the State of Israel for bringing remarks on behalf of their countries. A sincere thank you to tonight's performers for their outstanding and heartfelt songs, and a very deep appreciation to Anita Weinstein for sharing her story with us tonight. I would also like to thank Rabbi Annie Balmas for offering a benediction on behalf of all of us, and to Bill Wiseman, who will close tonight's event with a blowing of the shofar following my remarks. And finally, thank all of you across Canada and around the world for taking the time tonight to pay respects to the victims of the Amia terrorist bombing. May their memory be a blessing, and may their names never be forgotten.